How would you characterize yourself? Do you call yourself a patriot? Is your national identity tied to your sense of who you are? When someone asks you where you're from, do you open with your country of origin? You see, nations and nationalities are ingrained into the depths of our identities. Yet, nations are not timeless, nor the very idea of them. The nation as we know it today, with its defined borders, respected sovereignty, national culture, and laughable stereotypes, are not historical constants. Rather, the nation is a shared idea that has been reinforced over the past several centuries by our neighbors' newspapers and military might. So, let's explore such a wildly personal and universally recognized idea. In this episode of Big Picture Perspectives, let's talk about nations. In the long view of human history, the idea of a nation or national identity is quite new. Now, I'm not talking about empires or kingdoms. Those have existed as physical entities for thousands of years in one form or another. However, the idea of the nation has not. That is, a political union of people bound by shared language, history, or culture, or as one may call it, a national mythos. The national mythos is the spirit of the nation, a group of agreed upon historical tales or cultural stereotypes that champion certain shared values or morals. Think the American dream in the USA or liberté, égalité, fraternité in France. Yet the national mythos is simply an idea, a strong, emotionally palpable, but nevertheless illusory idea that unites disparate groups under a singular banner. There is no such thing as the American gene, nor is there such thing as a biological difference between a Frenchman or a German. They are entirely made-up distinctions that we have come to universally recognize. Instead, we use geography to clarify such distinctions. We demarcate borders on the surfaces of the earth to clearly define different nations and sanctify their sovereignty within their borders. But how did we get here? Well, people love making groups and setting their group apart from others. We are, after all, pack animals who lived in tribes long before any cities or states emerged. It's in our DNA to live in a group. Tribe, family, clan, city, social class, religion. Throughout time, we have chosen or been raised into one or more of these groups. Since the dawn of human civilization, these were the groups and identities that mattered. On a daily basis, you would interact with your family, your priests, and your fellow city dwellers. Often, you may interact with those from other families, other clans, or other cities. You may have also made a distinction between your group and the others. We wear red hats and they wear blue hats. Obviously, our red hats are superior. To put it neatly, groups were everywhere. But why wasn't nationality among these groups? Well, the answer is that the nation did not yet exist as an idea or a geographic entity. The earliest forms of states were either city-states or empires. City-states were small, governed areas under the rule of a city-level authority. Here, people may associate their identity or group with their city or various other city-dwelling groups. Comparatively, empires were large areas of land consisting of various different groups that were forcibly ruled by some central authority. Simply put, there were no large conglomerations of disparate people that shared similar languages, histories, or cultures. People were spread out, and their dispersion meant that unique identities could be cultivated. This did not change overnight either. Rather, over the long flow of human history and technological development, disparate groups began to discover and develop commonalities. For example, the invention of the printing press in Europe by Johannes Gutenberg in the 15th century enabled the rapid printing of books. Previously, most books were holy scriptures that were hand-copied by Christian priests. Now, books could be written and shared on any topic one could imagine. More books meant more people could now read about their fellow humans across seas or mountains and exchange ideas. The printing press was just one such technological development that enabled the bridging of people to develop novel groups spread over greater distances. Later, developments in transportation such as trains meant that people could physically interact over greater distances. Each of these developments brought larger groups of people into contact with one another, and with it, our penchant for group making only grew more ambitious. It's no wonder that the first substantial waves of nationalism in Europe and the New World emerged during the 19th century in the midst of the Industrial Revolution. As technological developments hastened and ideas began to spread at increasing speeds, national affiliations became ever more apparent. A German may say the French do things differently, but the only way they can make such a claim is because they must know something of what it's like to be French. Likewise, a Southern German could now see clear similarities in terms of language, history, or culture with their Northern neighbors through shared books or railway connections. Increasingly, technology and the sharing of ideas reaffirmed the us and more clearly depicted how different the other was. It allowed for the centralization and conglomeration of peoples in places like Germany, Italy, and the United States, while stoking the disdain for one's national neighbors. Tragically, nationalism culminated in the world wars of the early 20th century, with countries entering gruesome conflicts for some illusory idea of national superiority. The shock of the devastation from the world wars led many European leaders to shun or dial down the supposed superiority of their national identity. In places like the US, where their wars were not fought on home soil, national identity remained palpable, particularly in contrast to the new other, the Soviet Union. For the rest of the 20th century, nationalism would proliferate to other parts of the globe, with the era of decolonization opening opportunities for the development of national identities for much of the formerly colonized world. These developments have brought us to today, where national identity still remains integrated into our personal identities. However, national identities throughout the world are now being met by two forces: globalization and the internet. As the printing press and railroads brought European nationalism to the forefront of society in the 19th century, now globalization and the internet are raising the relevance of national identity once more, today. Similar dynamics are playing out again. Technological developments and the sharing of ideas are reaffirming the us while distinguishing the other. It's why we are seeing the rise of populist and nationalist leaders in places like the US, Europe, and Latin America, who cherish the illusory values of the national mythos while resisting integration and immigration. Likewise, it's why we are seeing transnational bonds being built between people on every continent. People in New York can now see the similarities they share with people in Singapore or Sydney, while building new shared histories and cultures while communicating in English, the modern lingua franca. Where this will lead in the future is completely unknown. Will humanity unite under ever larger banners through some sense of supranationalism? Or will the fractures widen and push nations to see themselves as ever more distinct from their neighbors? Whatever the case, it's worth your mindful attention and curious ponderings. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you. Please like and subscribe for more big picture perspectives. Just remember to stay curious. See you next time.